Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to show you my beginner Magicka Nightblade PVE build for the Ascending Tides DLC patch. As a part of the beginner setup series, I'll be focusing on a starting rotation and gear that are all easily accessible. Furthermore, for the sake of this theme and to be as new player friendly as possible, I'll be avoiding mythics, arena weapons, trial, or dungeon gear. The rotation for many classes will be simplified. This build is capable of pulling over 72k on the parts dummy and is viable for most starting content. The build specializes in normal group content such as trials, dungeons, and arenas. This build works great in Overland but is not specifically designed for it. Furthermore, throughout this video I'll be going over some ideas and tips to further progress yourself into mid and end game. Although hybrid builds are some of the strongest builds right now, I'll be focusing on a more traditional setup that either focuses on Magicka or stamina. So with that being said, here we go. So starting off in the character sheet, I'm 64 points into Magicka, and I'm running the Thief Mundus. For the race, I am High Elf. Other alternatives include Dark Elf, Khajiit, and maybe even Brennan would be fine. For consumables, we're going to be using Clockwork Citrus Fillet for any hard content. A cheaper and almost just as good alternative will be Witch Mother's Potent Brew, and if you're parsing or just need more sustain but can sacrifice the health, Ghastly Eyeball is always the go-to. Moving on to potions, so for potions we're just going to be running standard Essence of Spell Power. Essence of Spell Power is important in that it gives access to 3 major buffs that are important for Magicka DPS. These include Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, and Major Intellect. Please keep in mind that these potions do cost a bit to make and or buy, so make sure you have 3 points in medicinal use located from the alchemy skill line to make sure you benefit from the potions for the full duration. So for CP we're going to be running Master at Arms, Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, and Backstabber. For the red tree, we're going to be running Boundless Vitality, Rejuvenation, Siphoning Spells, and Sustained by Suffering. Beginner series, I decided to change the gear set a little bit. We're going to be running Julianos 5-piece with Hunning's 5-piece and 2-piece Night Mother. So breaking it down, we're going to start off with 2 daggers of Julianos. Main hand is Nirnhoned, and offhand is charged. If you don't have access to Nirnhoned, you can just make that either charged or precise. Doesn't make too big of a difference. Make sure you have Nirnhoned in the main hand slot and poison damage enchant. Offhand is going to be charged with a flame damage enchant. On the back bar, we're running an Inferno Staff of Julianos infused with an increased weapon and spell damage enchant. For the head and shoulders, we're going to be running 2 pieces of Night Mother, both in medium with Max Mag traded in Divines. And for the body, we have 5 pieces of Hunning's Rage, all crafted in light with Max Mag glyphs traded in Divines. And for jewelry, we're going to be running 3 pieces of Julianos jewelry, all with Bloodthirsty, all pieces of jewelry with spell damage glyphs. So for skills, we're going to be running Merciless Resolve, Elemental Weapon, Debilitate, Impale, Barb Trap, Incapacitating Strike, Twisting Path, Unstable Wall of Fire, Degeneration, Siphoning Attacks, Dark Shade, and Fiery Rage. So for the rotation, it's going to be split into 2 parts, where the first part is always going to be the same no matter what, and then the second part is just going to alternate between the 2. So what I mean by that is we're going to start off with a Twisting Path into an Unstable Wall of Fire, into a Degeneration, into a Debilitate, and then here comes the first part, which is going to be Barb Trap, Siphoning, Dark Shade, and 4 elemental weapons. And then it's going to go from the start again, which is Twisting Path, Unstable Wall of Fire, Degeneration, Debilitate, and then Incap, your ultimate, with 6 elemental weapons after that. The first 4 skills are always constant, and then the second part is alternating. In terms of progression, I definitely work on replacing Hunnings for Mother Sorrow as my first step. Mother Sorrow is a really good set and it's super easy to get considering it drops from Deshawn. For a basic beginner setup, it would be Mother Sorrow and Julianos paired with a monster set. For this particular setup, I'd recommend either Stormfist or Malda Inferno as the monster helms because Tempest Island and Banish Cell 2 on Vet isn't too difficult and the sets are very strong. Next, you have the choice of replacing your Mother Sorrow and Julianos. From here is moving towards mid to end game. Basai from the Trial Rockgrove is a really strong set, but does require running Rockgrove, which is a trial. Running it on normal is very easy and you should work on getting it if possible. I'd also like to point out that Reliquant on body is also becoming popular and it's perfect for hybrid builds. Regardless of which set you choose, you need to choose another set to pair it with. I like to call these front bar sets. These can be Kinra, Pillar of Nirn, Zogvin, and Advancing Yokeda. Please note note that most of these sets are in medium, so you'd have to run it on weapon and jewelry. Unless you're doing a hybrid setup, then you can run it on the body, but I definitely recommend running these, especially for traditional setup, on your jewelry and weapons. From this list, I think Kinnera is the best option, granted you're able to keep the stacks. Kinnera comes from the dungeon Black Drake Villa, Pillar of Nirn comes from Falkreath Hold, Advancing Yokeda comes from Hellraw Citadel, The Trial, and Zovgan comes from Frostvault. I'd also like to mention that Zovgan is unique in that it allows us to run a different skill instead of trap, freeing up a bar slot. Next is the Mythic route and Maelstrom Arena weapon. For Maelstrom Arena weapon, getting an Inferno staff on the back bar is probably the best choice, unless, as I said earlier, you're going for a hybrid build. Then in that case, Great Sword would probably work better. Mythics is kind of a pain to get, but they are some of the strongest items in the game. If you are going to be running a mythic, I'd go for a one piece slime crawl monster helm paired with Harpooner's Wading Kilt as the mythic. Harpooner's is viable for most content and is best in slot for that content. A good alternative will always be Death Dealer's Fate, and I also like to include that if you're doing solo content, Ring of the Pale Order is such a lifesaver. For monster helms, if you want to skip the mythic route, we have a few options, but Stormfist, Kjarnar, and Maul Inferno are my personal picks, and I think that wraps it up. So closing thoughts, if you don't like daggers and you want to be at range, you can always swap to an Inferno staff for a little bit less DPS, just daggers have superior DPS. So the reason why I'm running Elemental Weapon is because it has the highest single target damage out of all of the spammables accessible to Magicka Nightblade. Another viable option would obviously be Swallow Soul. If you do run Swallow Soul, you can always make Debilitate your flex spot because you get the passive for already having Swallow Soul on your bar. So as far as the rotation goes, I try to make it even more simple, but that was the best I could come up with. I do probably have to still figure some stuff out, and maybe I can make it a little bit easier, but the alternating part was just, there was 3 skills that were like close to 20 seconds that I couldn't keep on a 10-second timer, so I had to alternate them, otherwise I'd refresh 3 skills early, and so that was the main dilemma. And one last thing, we're not using Merciless Resolve at all. We're only using it once in the beginning to build the 5 stacks for the buff you get, because incorporating that into a beginner rotation is just way too difficult. And I think that wraps it up. That wraps up the build explanation section of this portion. As always, thank you for watching my video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Come join our Discord, by the way. Link is in the description. As a reminder, if this video helped in any way, please help the channel grow by subscribing. And if you like the piggies, like the video, feel free to stick around for an attached parse. If not, have a good day and thank you again.